Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Suri. Thanks for coming on. Great to see you. Mo Green, great to have you on. Anna, great to see you. Audrey, great to see you. Hope you're well. Michael McGoldrick, great to see you. Luminal Spoon, great to see you. James Gillian, thanks so much for that super chat. Putin is the butcher of Grozny. Sorry. The world must never forget. The impact that he's had over the last number of decades, all over Europe and all over the parts of Asia as well, has been devastating. And what's happened in Chechnya, what happened in Georgia, what happened in Ukraine 8 years ago, and what's happening at the moment. Just lost for words. Thanks for that super chat, James. We have Raven 1983, which of course we're going to talk about Ukraine tonight. Great to see you. We have Killer, great to have you on moderating once again. Thanks so much for coming on. We have Tedger, great to see you. Johan, great to see you. Juan, sorry. We have Enzo the God, great to see you. Tiny Demolition Lover, great to see you. SD White, great to see you. CGM, great to have you on. Pero, great to have you on. JJ, great to see you. Who else have we got? Rose, great to see you. Rose, hope you're well. Gene T, great to see you. Richard, great to have you on. Reagan Elite, great to see you. Phil Spicer, great to see you. Who else have we got? Mega Harry Baum, great to see you on once again. Sock Juice, great to see you. Who else do we see on? W and G Fan, Mark, Claire, Paul, and so many more. Great to have everyone on tonight. Hope you're all very well. And of course, solidarity with the people of Ukraine. We have a super chat from Valerio. Thanks so much, Valerio. Hope you're well. Hi, Max. Do you think the Brexit referendum and Russian interference in UK elections are linked somehow? I'm very upset for the Ukraine-Russian war. Cheers. Thanks so much, Valerio. Yes, of course they are linked. A number of Leave campaigns were receiving money from Russian individuals, and these individuals are of course connected to Putin. And we've seen it with we've seen it in the United States. Not huge amounts of money, but enough money to run propaganda campaigns, basically, in regards to Brexit, for example. And of course, yes, it's connected. And what has Putin got to do with Brexit? Well, the idea being that he wants to destabilize, and what better way to destabilize the European Union than supporting something like Brexit? Now, of course, Putin is not the architect of Brexit, but he saw it as an opportunity, no doubt, or people around him saw it as an opportunity to cause damage to European unity. And it continues today. It's about undermining unity. The enemies of Putin's, if once they're united, they're able to stand up to him. If they're divided, they'll let him do whatever the hell he wants. And what's upsetting as well is the fact that there are individuals who have been donating to the Conservative Party in particular. These people are avoiding the sanctions, because the government don't want to impose sanctions on people who donate to the party. And this is also undermining unity against Putin. Thanks for that super chat, Valerio. We have one from Alexis. Thanks so much, Alexis. Ciao, Max. Ciao, Alexis. Pero, thanks so much for that super chat. Salva Ukraini, thanks so much for that. Save Ukraine, I believe that's what you're saying. There is my wife is taking part in a solidarity march on Sunday in Venice. Hopefully that's going ahead. I'll be having a special morning with some other of our colleagues on YouTube. We're probably going to be talking about Ukraine, of course, but I'll give you some more details about that later on. But it's a very thanks to everyone there so far with the super chats, greatly appreciated. It's a very difficult period at this moment. No, I'm saying glory to Ukraine. Okay, sorry, apologies for that. It sounded like save or something like that, but glory to Ukraine, great. Yes, and so I'm asking my wife maybe to take some pictures and maybe some video when she's in Venice on Sunday. You know, a number of embassies around the world have, you know, seen a backlash. A number of Russian embassies around the world have seen a backlash from residents and from Ukrainians living in those respective countries. That's good. I just saw a video today in Dublin where there was a protest outside the Russian embassy, and a number of people within the Irish government have asked for the Russian ambassador to be expelled, which is good news. Old George, great to see you on the stream tonight. Hope you're well. So it's not going to be a full usual stream tonight, guys, but because we're going to focus mainly on one issue, but let's see. So I want to show you some news that has come in, and obviously it's coming in minute by minute, but here is an interesting clip from Sky News where they're explaining about where the Russian forces are placed and likely cities they're going to continue to attack. So of course they're attacking a number of cities around Ukraine, but where are we going to see further attacks?
Russian troops have been stretching the Ukrainian defences with a multi-pronged attack. The British Ministry of Defence Information in the MOD have produced some estimates of where they think the forces are, and they confirm more or less what we've been saying, that forces in Crimea have moved north and eastwards, that forces from Belarus have moved towards Kyiv and are in the north of Kyiv, but forces up in the northwest have not done as well and seem to have been held, particularly at a place like Chernobyl. It doesn't appear that they've got through that very easily, and so some of these forces are more slow arriving in Kyiv than they expected to be. Let's just have a look at what's happening in the Donbass. The Donbass region is where all this started, what, in a sense, this was supposed to be all about. And as expected, Russian forces have moved out of Crimea and were expected to move from the Donbass region itself to actually link up. It doesn't look as if they've made it, because Ukrainian forces seem to be holding them, even though they're caught in something of a pincer in the Donbass region. But it looks as if some of the fighting there has been fairly fierce, and at least from an immediate perspective, has actually helped the Ukrainians. But of course, the big issue is Kyiv. What is happening in Kyiv? Let's just have a look at the satellite photograph. In Kyiv, we know that Russian forces have effectively arrived in the northern part of the city. They are in the Oblon district, on the edge of it, and one would expect them to be able to move in if they wanted to. We also know that Russian forces have arrived in the west of the city. There is no sign yet that Russian forces have made it in similar situations in the east or the south of the city, maybe because they haven't been able to get there as quickly as was expected. We also know that there have been fights at the Hostomel airfield and some conflict at the Borispil airport. The fact is that Kyiv, in a sense, is like a clock. At 10 o'clock, at 12 o'clock, 10 o'clock and 9 o'clock, the Russians know that their forces are there. They're waiting to complete the circle. And when Kyiv is encircled, then they have the choice as to what to do next and whether to actually tell the Ukrainian government just to go or to move in and remove them.
So let me read some of the comments that's appeared here. David Lloyd says, Max, do you think that China will be emboldened to attack Taiwan? No, I don't think so. I think some people see it as a possible option for China, but I don't see that really happening because I think any attack on Taiwan would be from a strategic point of view. So they're not going to use something like this as cover. I don't think so. I think they would prefer to do it on their own terms. And over the last number of years, they've been testing Taiwan defenses on the island, but they haven't planned any major invasion. But they could be looking at this and seeing, not so much using this as cover, but looking at this and saying, okay, what sort of resistance are the Ukrainians putting up against the Russians? How successful is Russia? Of course, the situation is completely different. We tend to look at Taiwan as a small island that China should easily take, but it's definitely not the case. And I've seen a number of videos online about how it would take a lot of resources for China to take Taiwan. They would eventually do it, yes, but it would come at a huge cost, and it would take a lot of time to do that. And that would be even if Taiwan was acting alone and didn't actually have any support from, for example, the United States, which supposedly it would have support from the US. Russia is a rising power. China is a rising power. Russia is a declining power. China has much lower tolerance for chaos than Russia. Yes, I think China would prefer to have something quite clean, and Taiwan would not be something like that. Taiwan doesn't spend much at all on defense. I think they have been increasing their defense spending, however, although they are reliant on the United States. Thanks for your review on the Taiwan issue. No problem. But it is definitely one to watch over the next number of years, because the Chinese have been testing. See, the problem is they need to get their soldiers across the strait, and that's difficult. Then once you get the soldiers across, the terrain is not perfect. It's quite difficult to hold territory there. It's not, you would need massive numbers, and it's not just about having air superiority, because you need to take the land. So the Chinese would control the skies, but it would be a case of a long drawn out campaign. And you also have to look at the response back home. Are the Chinese willing to tolerate such a thing? But I definitely think the Chinese government are watching what's happening at the moment and saying, could it be something that we could emulate? David, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. I hope we're not going to see something like China and Taiwan. That would be pretty bloody. It'd be probably even worse than this, what we're seeing in Ukraine. Taiwan is better armed and prepared than Ukraine. Then there's the economic consequences to China, yes. Russia can tolerate a certain amount of sanctions, but I think China would, because it's a huge exporter. China, most of the goods produced in China are exported. So if there were sanctions or embargoes, it would deeply damage the Chinese economy. So they would be very careful about how they go about it. Unfortunately, I think it's something that is on the horizon, though. Welcome to everyone who's just joined the stream. Hope you're all very well this evening. Of course, we're talking about Ukraine. This is a report from The Guardian from 2 hours ago. It says there are reports of loud explosions in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and Reuters witness said artillery rounds had been heard in the capital. Another witness told the news agency that there was intense gunfire in the western part of Kyiv. Kyiv's mayor Vitaly Klitschko writes that 5 blasts within 3 and 5 minutes were heard near the power station near the north of the city. And there are reports coming in that the power station has been taken over by the Russians, and it's likely that they will shut it down or blow it up, one or the other. They want to darken the city. Some maybe good news coming in here as well. It says here, the hacker group Anonymous announced on Twitter today that they had reportedly hacked the database of the Russian Ministry of Defense website, breaching and leaking private data. In the same tweet, the group also posted screenshots of the reported data and provided a link where users can access it. That would be very interesting. I wonder if we'd find some of famous people we know quite well on the Brexit side. I wonder if we'd find any of those people, their names and addresses there. Not going to name any names, but I imagine some of them could be up there. The hack follows an announcement from the Russian government that Facebook would be partially restricted in the country after the social media site limited the accounts of several Kremlin-backed media organizations in the wake of Russia and Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. How does the Russian state step away from this? Because we're seeing, yes, the sanctions are at the moment low-profile sanctions, nothing really severe, nothing like Jacob Rees-Mogg, perhaps. He allegedly dumped some money from investments he had in Russia, I think, or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But there was some Russian connection with money that he shares or stocks he had that were dumped a few days ago. That was interesting. A true patriot, Jacob Rees-Mogg. What I love about people like these Brexiteers are they pretend to care about the average person on the street, and they have money, in Swiss bank accounts and in the Cayman Islands and in Russia, for example. Jacob Mogbojo, the Striped Crusader. Putin's got a tiger by the tail. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a few bots tonight. So, Ukrainian spokesperson was asked a difficult question here today, and by a member of Sky News, a Sky News reporter. This was an interesting exchange. I want to show you this.
Moving on. Do we have Sky News with us?
Yes, you do. Thank you very much for taking my question. Russia's defense secretary has said that Vladimir Putin has gone full tonto. That is English slang for completely mad. Certainly that's the view of many people looking at this. He's launched an unprovoked attack on his southern neighbour that is killing a lot of Ukrainian cousins of Russia and Russian soldiers. What's your reaction to that description of his action?
Well, it's surprising that such evaluations are given by Defense Minister of the UK regarding authorities of a different state. I think he could have thought up of similar adjectives. Thinking of British Prime Minister, if we talk about personal judgment, and if we talk about the operation and that there are people dying, then yes, unfortunately, this is a huge tragedy that there is a need to resort to such methods. And this is exactly what was talked about during 8 years. 8 years of our policy, of our efforts, our work, 24/7. That's what it took to demonstrate that the peaceful resolution of this high-tension conflict, which in 2015 was already a bloodbath, a priority problem that any other scenario.
Okay, we've heard enough from this Russian foreign ministry spokesperson. The Russian spokesperson are so arrogant. Yeah, they remind me actually of the Trump spokespeople. Remember the Trump spokespeople, when they would come out, they would be extremely angry, arrogant, dismissive. It's exactly the same sort of thing here. We've done nothing wrong, and we're dealing with these, these criminals. We're acting as a normal state. Do they actually believe it? That's my question. Do they actually believe what they're saying? Cole08, great to see you on the stream tonight. I thought Tonto was the Lone Ranger's Indian. So did I, actually. I didn't know it meant crazy or totally nuts. She's a puppet, nothing else. I think he meant go loco. The little racist inside his head was thought off reservation, and he said Tonto. Trump was Putin's lapdog. Stuart Douglas, thanks so much for that super chat. Conway was the worst one for that. For Trump. Yeah, I remember that one. Stuart, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Roman Abramovich's daughter is no fan of Putin based on anti-Putin Instagram she posted made earlier today. Putin will fear losing oligarch support. They hold his money. Yes. And look, we have to focus on and this is where I want to criticize the Italian government deeply here, because they, we need to work together to impose sanctions. And we can't have, for example, and this was depressing today when I read about how the Italian government has decided, no, we want to carve out certain things from these sanctions. For example, luxury goods. Yes, you heard me right. We want to exclude luxury goods from these sanctions. We need to make sure that Russian millionaires and billionaires are continuing to buy Ferraris and Gucci and Dolce Gabbana or whatever. No, that should be the priority. You should be focusing on those things instead. I don't know what other things were included in the sanctions, but luxury goods are the things that you should be sanctioning first of all. Is it an attempt to protect these industries? Are these, somebody from Dolce Gabbana or Gucci calling up the Italian government and saying, Italian foreign minister, and saying, look, make sure that our products are off the list? And does the foreign minister reply with, yes, I'll make sure that your products are off the list? Really? It's a priority. There are people dying in Ukraine, but we want to make sure that people get overpriced plastic handbags. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Hypocrisy in the world, Max. Thousands of airstrikes in Palestine, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and many more others. Nothing. Less than a week of conflict in Ukraine. Universal worldwide condemnation. I agree. And unfortunately, it's how the media works. We focus on issues closer to home, unfortunately. I don't think it's... I think it's about the idea that it's in Europe. We tend to focus on issues that are closer to Europe, and less on issues that on parts of the world that are further away. I hope I'm not wrong on this, but I believe it's not something racist. I think it's about the idea that it's close to home, and Ukraine is close to home. But you are right, yeah. There was bombing in Syria today. There was bombing in parts of Africa today, but it didn't appear in the news at all. We have wall-to-wall coverage of Ukraine. And of course, it's important to talk about what's happening in Ukraine, but we mustn't forget what's happening around the world as well. Thanks for that super chat, Gareth. Some people have mentioned also China as well, but these things tend to stay in the news for a few days and then they're gone. The Ukraine crisis is going to remain for weeks, but you know what's going to happen? It'd be like Georgia and others. It will disappear. The issue will continue in that country, but our focus will be on something else. And within a few weeks, we'll be talking Ukraine. Oh yeah, remember that? I forgot about that. That's how our short attention span works when it comes to issues like this. And, I blame the media for this as well. There is this idea of building up. I was looking at how views on, for example, on Sky News have gone through the roof over the last number of days over this issue. People are focusing on this particular part of the world. Next week, it'll be probably back to normal again. MJM2, thanks so much for that super chat. It's the racism and it's also the nukes, in my honest opinion. There is a real concern that Putin has threatened countries if they get involved that he will respond with nukes. I don't think he'd do that. I don't think he's that nuts. But then I was thinking he wouldn't really... Why would he invade Ukraine? About a week ago I was thinking, I had my doubts on whether he would actually invade. I thought he would try to hold on to Donbas region and Crimea and pressure from there. So try to rattle the government in Kyiv. But in reality, no, he went full-on invasion. That was unexpected. And I think a lot of people were not expecting that. Thanks for that super chat. But it is the nukes, and he has said, yes, if anyone threatens us, we will respond with hell. And I'm deeply concerned about what's happening with, for example, Sweden and Finland, where they want to join NATO. They're not members of NATO. They want to join, and the response from Russia has been, you will not join NATO. We will not allow you. We will not allow you. We will respond with force if you are welcomed into NATO. James, again, thanks so much for that super chat. Now that Chernobyl has been captured by Russia, should we be worried about Putin unleashing radioactive waste into Ukraine and Eastern Europe? I would have originally said no, because what does he gain from that? But I don't know if this is true or not, but allegedly levels of radiation have increased. Now, why has that happened? The only thing I can imagine is that soldiers who have no understanding of what's happening in Ukraine, in Chernobyl, Russian soldiers have gone into the station, into the power station, and started messing about, maybe, or instructed scientists to remove some of the material. That would result in a higher readings, because I don't think the scientists who are working there, the operators of the power station, would be messing about with this stuff. So unless they're told to mess about with it. And I don't know if there's an attempt to remove some of this material, to take it back, or just to take it out and use it as some sort of threat. I hope that's not the case. But readings from this part of Ukraine, from Chernobyl, have actually increased. And that's extremely concerning. But I don't think he would use it as a weapon. because it's not predictable. And if he's planning to hold territory here, then he'd be responsible for it. And also, this is next door to Belarus, so if he were to do anything, he would upset the leader of Belarus, who's, of course, inside Putin's pocket at the moment. But his position is getting a bit precarious because his people are, he's ruling them as a dictator, but the president of Belarus is, he should be looking over his shoulder at the moment, because if Putin ends up badly here, he's going to end up badly too. And he doesn't want, somebody messing about with Chernobyl on his doorstep. Thanks for that super chat. We have another one from Phil. Thanks so much, Phil. What does sanctioning an individual, i.e. Putin, mean over organizations? I think it's more... personally, I don't think it has very much of an impact on him, because Putin has access to his money that's in Russia. But it could limit his access. So he probably has money abroad. I don't think Putin is not somebody who would keep all his eggs in one basket. So I'm sure he has money in Swiss bank accounts, or he has money in the Cayman Islands, or he has money all over. And putting sanctions on him in particular limits his access to that money. And that could be a problem if he realizes that things are going south and I have to get out of here. Normally what these dictators do is they run away. They try to escape, and they normally have resources somewhere hidden away, and they have access to that later on. So limit putting personal sanctions on him. It depends on what he has outside the country. Now, of course, it would limit his movements as well, because if he was to, I imagine some of these sanctions would be to maybe arrest him if he arrives in a particular country. That could be something that would harm him, of course. But some of it can also be just embarrassing, just in an attempt to embarrass the Russian leader, because you don't want to be the leader of a country and to be sanctioned. They're not going to turn. It's not going to turn the ship around. It's a bit more punitive. Mr. Peter KJ, thanks so much for that super chat. Great Britain would never claim a province of next door. Oh wait, yes. So wonderful. That's in response to a video I uploaded earlier, where the Russian foreign minister was talking about how if Ireland clamped down on the English language, that the UK would be justified in a way. He wasn't very clear, but I think that's what he was getting at. Would be justified with invading Ireland. So Britain could invade Ireland if Ireland forbid the use of the English language. No, but also by saying that you don't understand Irish history very well, and you don't understand that the Irish language was forbidden for many years, for decades, for centuries even, when Ireland was part of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom of Britain and Ireland. Ireland was part of the United Kingdom, and during that time, Irish people were not allowed to vote. Irish people were not allowed to speak their own language. So I think he got it a little bit backwards, but yeah. I'm not expecting him to be an expert in Irish history, but it was a very weird example to use, or analogy to use. MGM, Putin's super yacht just left Germany. Well, that could have been impounded. Why wasn't that impounded before? If we knew, thanks so much for that super chat and that information. Why wasn't that impounded before? Why wasn't it seized? Why aren't all, any countries like Germany, Britain, France, Italy, they have a list. They know whose they know the ins and outs of Putin's administration, his regime, and they know everyone, and they have a good idea of how connected certain individuals are to Putin. And, you know, these are governments, these are sovereign states. They have the ability to seize people's assets. After they can make a complaint, they can even sue if necessary. But wouldn't it be, you know, prudent to block these things now and then release them after? If these people have proven, you know, I have no connection to Putin, I'm just a regular billionaire, then that's fine. Okay, we'll release your asset later on. We'll give you back your yacht, your super yacht. But seize them now. I really don't understand why we're not doing that. Either is it because, you know, we don't want to upset, you know, these people, because perhaps some of these people have connections, not just to Boris Johnson's government, to other governments around Europe? Is that the case? Has the corruption run a bit deeper than we originally thought? And that's why we're not imposing stricter sanctions? Is that why we're not impounding a lot of these boats and seizing these homes? There are multimillionaires and billionaires who have homes worth hundreds of millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of euros around Europe. Why aren't we seizing them? Just, you know, playing it cautious, say, look, we'll seize it and then we'll give it back if necessary. Thanks for that super chat. Oh, we have another one from Richard Turner. Thanks so much, Richard. Hope you're well tonight. The dust was kicked up by the tanks in Chernobyl, according to the Ukrainian nuclear energy agency, thankfully. So it was just, okay. So of course, yes, around Chernobyl there would be radioactive material, and yes, generally the only vehicles that would be coming in and out would be cars. But if you're having heavy vehicles passing through, they're going to upset the dust, and it's going to probably increase the level. So that's, thanks for that. That's a relief, because I thought, I truly feared it was somebody messing about. Of course, it's not a good idea to have, you know, military personnel in this area. This should be protected. And of course, many people seem to forget about how the European Union has spent billions of euros over the last number of years making this area safe, working with the Ukrainian government to protect the exposed core, to make sure that it's contained. And there was a cover built some years ago. European money and Ukrainian money and international money was spent to produce this cover that it's expected to remain for about, I think, 100 years. It'll eventually have to be replaced. But we don't like the idea of something like that falling into the wrong hands. Thanks for that super chat, Richard. John says, will Scotland be allowed to join NATO? Well, that's a very loaded question. So Scotland, of course, Scotland would have to become independent first. Scotland is hoping to join the European Union. I think Scotland would be allowed to join NATO. I think there are smaller countries than Scotland in NATO at the moment. So yes, I definitely think Scotland would be allowed to join. You know, would the United Kingdom, or Wangland, as Graham Hughes calls it, would it veto Scotland joining? I don't know. I don't see why it would, you know, in order just to punish an independent Scotland. But in this period in history, I think being part of NATO is better than not being part of NATO. And I think one of the arguments by people normally on the left in Ireland, for example, you know, they wanted Ireland to remain neutral, not to join NATO, was the idea that, well, if you join NATO, then you become a target. And well, look at Ukraine. Ukraine is not a part of NATO, and it is a target. and it can't rely on NATO. And that's a problem, something that many people don't seem to understand. People are asking, why aren't we sending troops into Ukraine? Why aren't we sending tanks and planes? Why aren't we imposing a no-fly zone? Because first of all, because because Ukraine is not part of NATO, and if we do get involved, then the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, United States would be seen as a co-combatant, and that would expose them in a sense. They would actually, in a sense, have to declare war on Russia in order to do so. You don't want to do that. So they would prefer to do it through NATO, but Ukraine needs help at the moment. Thanks for that super chat. I hope I was able to answer your question there, but I think a number of things have to happen before Scotland can join NATO. But I do see it eventually happening. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. IMAX next week. Next week's news item, Alan Foster mud wrestling. Thanks for this funny Mo. I think we need a bit of light-hearted humour here. But, you know, it is a pretty depressing moment we're in. Thanks for that. Ireland Foster mud wrestling Mary Lou McDonald at the Northern Ireland Republic of Ireland border. Protocol or bust showdown. Winner takes all. I remember, of course, I don't know if it actually happened or not, but I remember the movie Patton. One of the scenes that just stuck out with me. I don't know if you guys have seen the film Patton. I think it's 1971 or something. George C. Scott as George C. Patton. There was a scene in North Africa where Patton said, "Look, it should be me in my tank and Rommel in his tank, and that we fight it out, and the winner of that battle decides the outcome of the war." And and when you said about Mary Lou McDonald and Eileen Foster mud wrestling, not as noble as Patton versus Rommel, but excuse me, it could be a case of something like that. So you don't need a border poll, you just need to see who comes out on top, and that would decide whether Northern Ireland remains part of the Union or Northern Ireland joins the rest of the Republic and forms a united Ireland. But I think maybe you're onto something there, Gareth. Thanks so much for that super chat. We need moments like this. Thanks for that. God bless you. Tonthon, thanks so much for that super chat. It may be Hungary, 1956, all over again, but this time some support for Putin are in the Western governments. At the same time, it is further east. Yes, the idea something like this happened. This would not have happened in 1956 because the West would have been united against Russia. You would have had, you wouldn't have people like Nigel Farage, who have been promoting Russia for the last number of years, suddenly over the last few days saying, no, I disagree with Putin. Yeah, okay. Brexit supporters receiving money in brown envelopes from the Kremlin because they were seen as useful idiots. Look, I don't think the people issuing the checks from Moscow were, thinking that much about Brexit, but they saw these as useful idiots, people who would undermine Britain, they would undermine Europe, and they were seen as beneficial. Somebody who could do our bidding in a sense. They're the ones lighting the fires. As I said, and I said before, Brexit is like a fire. We have our arsonists. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage. These are the arsonists. And in a sense, Russia was paying for the petrol. They were not lighting the match. The Brexiteers did that. But Russia and others chipped in to make sure that they had enough money to buy the petrol, to burn down, to burn the Union, in a sense, the European Union. Thanks for that super chat. Somebody says Farage is a living Russian bot. Yes. Why would Putin stop at Ukraine? Roshin, I don't think he's going to stop at Ukraine. He has suggested that Estonia and other countries could be next. Moldova could be next. You know, he has threatened Sweden and Finland. I don't think it'd be a good idea to invade Finland. That didn't go very well the last time. Yes, Russia, I think, eventually won, but at a huge cost. There was the Winter War in 1941, I think it was, or 1942. It was an absolute disaster for Russia. So I don't think we're coming out of winter now, of course, but it's still pretty cold up there, and you don't want to end. Of course, you're fighting, invading a land with conscripts, and I've been following a few people on Twitter, a few experts. I think they're experts anyway, and they've talked about how the soldiers Russia is using at the moment are teenagers and conscripts. They're not battle-hardened soldiers. They're just basically kids or people who've just come out of boot camp. And one example was raised was how so there are a lot of the tanks Russia has been sending in have been destroyed, and armored vehicles have been destroyed, because what's happening is these tanks are rolling in, but they don't have the soldiers alongside to keep an eye out for example, anti-tank weapons. And that's what you see in movies. You'd have the tank and you'd have the soldiers with the tank, because the soldiers are necessary to take out anyone with an anti-tank gun or any anti-tank rocket launch. For example, these Javelin, they're called Javelin. These are anti-tank weapons. You need somebody. You don't shoot at an anti-tank weapon with a tank, because it can move around. So that's why you have infantry. The infantry spread out and they deal with these types of threats. But what's happening instead is that the soldiers are remaining within the armored personnel carriers or the tanks, and they're not getting out because they're afraid to get out because it's dangerous. So they feel safe within the armored vehicle, but that exposes them to anti-tank weapons. But experienced soldiers know that. They know when to get out. They know when to get back in. They know what areas are safe for tanks, which areas are not safe for tanks. And this is why we're seeing in parts of the country the advancement of these Russian soldiers slowing. We have a super chat from the Ministerian. Thanks so much for that. I'm sure Simo. Oh, one moment, it's moving down. Oh, we also have. I'll just read out Gareth first. Both of you came in at the same time. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Experts. We've had enough of experts, Max. Very well said. Yes. Too many experts. We don't need to hear more experts. Was it Michael Gove said that? Yes. Or was it experts or exports? Because I think he said experts. You think he said experts, but maybe he actually said exports. We've had enough of exports, because he's definitely dealt with that problem of exporting things. Don't want to be exporting too much. Thanks for that. Ministerian, thank you so much. I'm sure Simo would come back to life and fight for Finland. Probably would, yes. Thanks for that super chat as well. The Russian army hasn't forgotten about the ass whipping a battalion of Russians received in Syria, attacking less than a company of Americans. So we tend to look at the numbers, we tend to look at the amount of hardware, but the hardware is only as good as the people driving it, the people operating it. And if you don't have the right soldiers and you don't have trained soldiers, and a lot of these soldiers their morale is pretty low. They've been sitting on the border with Ukraine for weeks now. The conditions, I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures of the conditions. Some of the soldiers were having to go and buy their own food because they weren't being provided with the material that they need. In one town, it seems the Russian soldiers looted one of the towns because they didn't have any food. Like, you know, can you imagine, you know, not being provided food, having to buy your own food or having to steal food, and then the general or officer comes along and says, okay, now we're going to attack those people because they're bad. And you're like, really? You know, and that results in, and we've seen a number of, I think there was a whole battalion, Russian battalion that surrendered. You know, it wasn't that they were being attacked; they were attacking and they surrendered. As soon as they met some resistance, they surrendered. That's an example of very low morale. I'm not saying all the Russian army is like that, but you know, if you don't have a force of 160,000 highly trained soldiers, that's almost impossible. European army is coming and England can't stop it again. Yes, that's definitely, I think this has really backfired for Putin. So he'll probably win this in the short term, but in the long term, this is an absolute disaster for him, because he has, instead of driven a wedge between members of NATO and non-NATO members, he has strengthened NATO, because more countries want to join NATO now because they see it as a guarantee of security. And Europe, of course, is going to invest more in the military now. You know, I don't know if you guys saw the video I uploaded. I think it was either last night or this morning, where it was a Polish politician who was talking about how we don't have the hardware. Germany has 200 tanks, the UK has 200 tanks, France has 200 tanks, Russia has 13,000. There's going to be, I think we're going to see massive investment in the military. And it's not something I generally support, because I think we should be, you know, how can we be investing in the military when we have food banks? That's what I find so frustrating about all of this. There are countries around the world that have pretty advanced militaries, and they're able to balance that with, you know, improving the lot of ordinary people. I think that should be focused as well. It doesn't have to be we spend all on the military and nothing on our people. You can do both, I think, if you want to. That's the thing. Governments can spend money where they want to. The problem is they decide not to. Platoon is 20-30 people. Putin has lost the plot. Did he ever have the plot? So just as one of you guys was talking earlier on, this is about Chernobyl. Ukraine reports higher but not critical radiation levels at Chernobyl. So as you said, yes. And it does seem, yes, it was about movements of, so it says here, the inspectorate attributed the rise to a disturbance in topsoil due to the movement of large amounts of heavy military equipment through the exclusion zone and the release of contaminant radioactive dust into the air. So the radiation levels are rising at the plant based on automated monitoring data, but cast out on the attribution of the disturbed soil reported. So it's still a bit inconclusive as to whether it's the tank movement or if it's something else, but it's probably likely, you know, you're having heavy vehicles moving through there at speed probably, so they're going to create a lot of dust. And of course there is still a lot of radioactive material around Chernobyl. So following on from this, the Council of Europe has suspended Russia's rights of representation. The Council of Europe has suspended Russia. A number of countries are in the Council of Europe. For example, the United Kingdom is still in the Council of Europe. It's not in the EU, of course, but it's in the Council of Europe. It's different from the Council of Europe is not to be confused with the European Union. It's like a very loose, connected body that represents it's about countries within Europe working, the European continent working together, including others as well. But it's not significant, but it is how can I say, symbolic to have Russia kicked out. It's not going to damage Russia a great deal, but it is embarrassing. And, you know, Putin will have to explain to his people all of the things that have been lost. You know, when this battle is over, what has Putin to show for it? Well, we've been sanctioned. We're out of the Council of Europe. We have lost access to certain markets. Russian producers can't export. Things like this. This is not good for a leader. He should be actually coming back with some benefits. And what is he going to come back with? You know, the most he can do in Ukraine is replace the government and put in a puppet. But how long is that puppet regime going to last? And that puppet regime is going to be viewed by the West as obviously a puppet regime, and it's going to damage Ukraine's ability to trade as well. So there'll be sanctions against that puppet regime. You know, the Ukrainian people don't want that either. And I think, you know, really, what is he attempting to achieve here? Unless it's bit by bit, okay, first we take Ukraine, we put in our puppet regime, we hold on to that. Then we go after Moldova and we put in our puppet regime there. Then we try to attack some of the NATO countries. That's not going to work. I think he's playing a very dangerous game here. That Maria, thanks so much for that super chat. Will Sue Gray investigate Putin? Well, I wonder how her this is very interesting. Thanks so much for that super chat. That's a very interesting question. I know it's a joke, of course, but it is actually a very interesting question because we haven't heard about Boris Johnson and his parties. And what's interesting is his supporters in the media are suggesting that we should forget about Boris Johnson breaking the law. We should forget about what happened with Partygate. Partygate should be suspended during this crisis. No, it should not, because just because Boris Johnson is sort of imposing sanctions on Putin and in the Russian government, doesn't mean that Boris Johnson can still break the law in his own country and get away with it. No, that doesn't fly. But yes, somebody should be investigating Putin. Kudos for covering this, Max. Thanks so much, Cash Dummy. Great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well and discussing it, even though controversial. I see other YouTubers and TVs delivering their content as if it was fine. Look, to be honest, I normally cover Brexit, and the channel does really well when I'm talking about Brexit. This week I've been talking about Ukraine, and it's, you know, if you can look at the views on some of the videos, it's pretty low. But I think it's important to talk about these issues because this is history taking place, and you know, this is the biggest event facing Europe since 1945, and I think some major changes are coming. And you know, the people of Ukraine didn't want this, they didn't ask for this, and they're suffering the consequences of it. And I hope once Putin is sent away with his tail between his legs, I really hope this is going to be a shot in the arm for Ukraine joining the European Union, because that's what they want to do. Ukraine wants to join the European Union. Reforms have to take place, of course. Ukraine is not a perfect country. There are issues of corruption and other, but you know, that's a side issue for now. But it's I really do hope that this is going to speed up the process, and we're going to see Ukraine as a member of the European Union, because that's what these people want, and it's important that the Ukrainian people, their views are respected. Thanks so much for that super chat. Gareth, once again, thank you so much. Very kind of you, Gareth. I hope you're very well tonight. You've been very kind to me tonight. You say sanctions. Look, Max, we all want this war to end. No, I don't suppose the blowing dear old Vlad into the next millennium would extradite the process. I don't know if there's an idea to do something like that, but I think he's painted himself into a corner here. I think what he was hoping was that he'd have a swift victory in Ukraine, put in a puppet, and then sort of build a buffer between himself and the West, and that Ukraine would become this buffer. Because you have to think about, so we're viewing this from the point of view of, this is insane. But Putin views, allegedly, of course, this is what we hear from experts, people who know him a bit better than I do anyway. They're saying that Putin views the collapse of the USSR as a great tragedy. I think he said it was the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. And he sees himself as the rebuilder of that. So countries like Ukraine, Moldova, and others, they're not independent sovereign states. They're children who got lost, and they're being brought back into the family. Now, unfortunately, in his view, the governments of those children are corrupt, and they don't want to come back, but so they have to be forced back in. I think that's what's going through his mind, and of course the people who are trying to keep those, try to stop that family coming together, Europe, the United States, the West in general, want to see Russia as a third world country. They want to see it crushed. They want to see it begging for handouts. And I think if you look back at the mid-1990s, where Russia was a failed state, where it was on its knees. It was a superpower that almost overnight became a second or third world country. And I think that was really damaging for someone like Putin. He couldn't digest that, and he couldn't accept that. And he sees it as his vision, his goal, his calling maybe, to return the USSR to its rightful status. And this is about bringing countries like Ukraine back into the fold. So it won't stop there. But I think he is eventually going to see that this has failed. And this, in the short term, he may score some victories, but in the long term, this is going to strengthen the connection between Ukraine and Europe. Eventually, Ukraine joining the European Union, we can see that happening eventually. And then that will be, if Putin is still around, that will be probably the worst day of his life, because it would have fully demonstrated itself that the USSR is over, that it's dead. Thanks so much for that super chat. Oh, we have another one from the Freckle Punny. Thanks so much for that. Will Lidl stop selling Putinov vodka? If it's made in Russia, yes, unless it's some Russian guy in Germany making it, then probably no. I never actually saw that. I didn't know that they sold Putinov vodka. Although you can get vodka from Finland, I think. So Finland makes vodka as well, so you don't have to buy it from Russia. Thanks for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. So let's move on. So what has Putin said to the people of Ukraine? Well, it says here, angry Putin calls on Ukrainian army to overthrow government. So I think this has been part of his plan as well, that the people of Ukraine would, under pressure, would decide, okay, we want peace at any cost, so we'll get rid of our own government and we'll overthrow the government. And I think he has either been fed bad information, or he deeply doesn't understand the Ukrainian people. So as I say, Russian President Vladimir Putin has urged the Ukrainian army to overthrow its leadership, whom he labelled as a gang of drug addicts and neo-Nazis who have lodged itself into Kyiv and taken hostage the entire Ukrainian people. This is not going to work. Addressing the Ukrainian military in a televised address, visibly angry Putin urged the military to take power into your own hands. Putin further repeated his claim that the Ukrainian leadership had been engaged in genocide in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine. We're fighting the nationalist groups that are directly responsible for the genocide of the Donbas and the bloodshed of peaceful civilians in the two republics. In the address, Putin further accused the Ukrainian neo-Nazi leadership of acting like terrorists by cowering behind civilians. Now, this is an interesting line here, cowering behind civilians. What he's talking about here is the fact that, look, Ukraine doesn't have the military resources to fight Russia. And what the Ukrainian president has been doing over the last number of days is been handing weapons to civilians, saying to civilians, we need your help. We can't do this on our own. We don't have the firepower. And there are two ways of looking at this. So on the surface, it looks as if it's a good tactic. You arm civilians and they can fight alongside the soldiers. Now, there's another side to look at this. If you have, so the Russian army are, they're soldiers, and soldiers are trained to fight other soldiers. They're not trained to fight civilians. So soldiers are told when you see civilians, you not lay down your weapons, but you lower your weapons. But if there are civilians who are carrying weapons, how do you respond to that? And it's very difficult for ordinary soldiers to shoot civilians. So it's going to be, I think what's happening now, this is either, once again, I don't know what the thinking of the Ukrainian president is. If it's the former, where he says, look, we just need as many bodies as we can, we need as many soldiers as we can. That's why he's giving out weapons to civilians and asking them to defend their country. Or if it's a tactic to convince Russian soldiers not to attack because their own humanity will stop them. And, there are Russian soldiers who want to follow the law. They don't want to be involved in any case of genocide or war crimes. And shooting civilians is a war crime. And many of these officers and soldiers don't want to be dragged in front of a tribunal in the future saying, well, I was just following orders, because that doesn't wash. And in the same way as, it's not comparable, but in a similar way, what I think many of Border Force in the UK, when Priti Patel was saying about we're going to send the Navy to push dinghies back to France, many people in the Navy were saying, we're not doing that. That's against our own ethics. It's against our own rules. And I think also many of the naval officers were saying to themselves, probably privately, who will be in the dock if something eventually comes out about this? If somebody is eventually punished over this, who will be facing a tribunal? Will it be me, or will it be Priti Patel? Because Priti Patel will be off, relaxing in her retirement. I'll be the one facing a judge. I'll be the one saying I was just following orders, and it's not going to wash. I'll be the one doing time, not Priti Patel. And I think a lot of members of the Navy probably thought about that, but also, of course, they're humans and they don't want to do this. And of course, they have to follow a strict military code. Alexander, thanks so much for that super chat. What Putin is telling his own people is not what is occurring on the ground. also calling the Ukrainian government neo-Nazi when Zelensky is Jewish. Shake my head. He will sleep. This is somebody who does not give a crap about the rule of law, does not give a crap about the ordinary workings of government. He'll use whatever tactics he can. And, this is somebody who has, this is somebody who Brexiteers like Nigel Farage admire. Okay. So, we know what Nigel Farage is like. We know what Boris Johnson is like. And they generally admire somebody like Putin. Or, well, until recently they did. Putin hasn't changed, but they have somewhat decided, no, we're not going to admire him anymore. Thanks for that super chat, Alexander. Thanks for coming on the stream as well. Hope you're well. Let me read some more of your comments. No one cared about oligarchs and corruption before this aggression. I did. I certainly did. I've been banging on about corruption for a long time now, and I've said from the very beginning of this channel, I said, money in politics corrupts politics. Why would somebody, if you can donate £10,000 or €10,000 to a politician, why would that politician listen to voters? They're going to listen to you. And what's the point in voting if somebody else can come along? 10,000 people vote for a politician according to a manifesto pledge, and somebody else comes along and gives that politician £100,000 to do the opposite of that manifesto pledge. What is that politician going to do? They're going to do is exactly as they're told by their donor, and that's corrupting. There's no reasonable excuse for that. Money has to be removed from politics. Political parties need to be publicly funded. I like the idea of I think it was, not that I agree with him on everything, okay, I think he has some serious problems, but it was Andrew Yang who came up with, in the United States, the idea of the, democracy dollars, where every citizen would receive something like $50, where they could donate this $50. They couldn't spend it on themselves, they couldn't spend it on whatever, but it had to be spent on a political party. And it was a way of donating money to a political party, so that, in a way, smaller parties would also get donations that would normally struggle to get donations. So this was a good idea, I think. But political parties should be publicly funded. There should not be private donations, or donations from corporations or companies or banks or people outside the country. Should not be allowed. There are Ukrainians traveling from the US to engage with the fighting. Some of these will be US Special Force trained. That's interesting. I can confirm, I remember you ranting about it way back in the day. Max never changed, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks, or was it leopard doesn't change his spots. Germans were more influential in Britain, and their Chancellor Angela Merkel for 21 years. Was she a dictator too? Not sure what you mean by that. Swift is pointless. I've learned this today from an LBC, an expert. Swift is like an email from Amazon telling you money is coming, but the money is transferred without Swift. That's a very interesting point, yeah, because mentioning a lot about how Swift, Russia needs to be taken off this SWIFT system. This would be a way of, and unfortunately, a lot of this is lost in the noise. The reality of this is lost in the noise, and it did seem to be something I was wondering why aren't, it seems a very simple thing, take Russia off the SWIFT system, but then I've heard actually others saying that's not actually going to really damage Russia that much, because they can find alternatives. So if they have an alternative, then it's not really a sanction. If I say you're not allowed to have any petrol, but you are allowed to have diesel, then yeah, the petrol is a problem, but if you have an alternative, then you get around the sanction. So that's, a lot of this is a very high level noise, high level rhetoric, And unfortunately, I think some politicians are trying to take advantage of it. Yes, we are the ones on the side of imposing sanctions with getting Russia kicked off the SWIFT system. But then if SWIFT is not the be-all and end-all, then you're just playing to the crowd. And you're not serious about sanctions. So be very careful about people who try to push one particular type of sanction, but are not interested in sanctioning, for example, many individuals. And this is my criticism of the Conservative Party. They are, Boris Johnson at the moment, banging on about sanctioning Russia with the SWIFT system. But he won't bang on about imposing sanctions on oligarchs. So, which begs the question, does Boris Johnson really want to sanction Russia? Derek, thanks so much for that super chat. Let's pretend this is 20,000, Max. Remember me when you're king or prime minister. 20,000? Yeah, that will get you a PPE contract, Derek. Do you want it with your name on it or with a synonym? Thanks very, very much for that. Very kind of you. Have a great evening. Great to see you on the stream. Oh, we have Ian. Thanks so much, Ian Edmonds. Great to see you. Very kind of you for that £20. Great to have your support. SWIFT is at least symbolically important. Yeah, but one thing is, I think, symbolic. A bit like, as I said before about kicking Russia off the Council of Europe. It's embarrassing, but it is in a sense symbolic. SWIFT, again, probably symbolic, but we really need, and I've said this before, hit these people in the pocket. Because if you impose really strict sanctions on the people who are propping Putin up, the people who are, members of Gazprom and other organizations like this, people who are making huge amounts of money because Putin is there. If these people, these are like the Tory backbenchers, okay? These are like Boris Johnson's red wall. If these people feel the pinch, then they're going to do something about it. But it has to be not one or two, it has to be all of them. Confiscate their assets, confiscate their boats, their yachts, their mansions. That's what you need to do. Otherwise, a little bit of cosmetic sanction here or there is they're going to weather that. Oh look, I can't get my Ferrari back from Chelsea. Oh well, I'll just buy another one. That's not going to work. It has to be, your property has been impounded. Your bank account has been frozen. The bank accounts of people within your family have been frozen. The state have a huge amount of power. They can do these things if they really want to. Even if there are people who disagree with Putin but are connected in some way, impounding those people will. If these people are connected to him, obviously they're connected to family members. These multimillionaires and billionaires, they're family members. Impound seize their assets as well. The state can do that if they want to. The state has a huge amount of power. Doing this would put pressure on those people, and they would put pressure on Putin eventually. Confiscate their football clubs, exactly. Very well said, Alexander. We're talking about houses and yachts. No, football clubs. Confiscate their football clubs. But unfortunately, I don't think there's much of an appetite for that. And the longer this goes on, the appetite will, and mark my words, guys, the appetite will wane. Be like, oh, well, we can make a few exceptions here, and then those exceptions will grow. And then, let's start talking about something else. And then, unfortunately, it's taken off the front pages and the sanctions get weaker and weaker. This is the moment to impose very strict sanctions, severe, biting ones. A brilliant strategy to buff up economic shortcomings. Len in 1916. So it says here also, Western powers have realized Russia is largely immune to sanctions. This is from The Guardian. Russia's conflict with Ukraine, despite its long gestation and planning by Vladimir Putin and his supporters in the Kremlin, was supposed to end quickly once financial retaliation began. Yes, there would be military skirmishes on the ground, but little more than a few casualties were expected once a range of penalties began to bite. The Western powers have quickly realized that unless they're willing to fire the financial equivalent of a nuclear arsenal, Putin has made sure Russia is largely immune, at least in the short term. Over a decade, Kremlin policy has carefully reduced domestic public and private sector debt and allowed the central bank to build up a war chest of foreign assets large enough to shore up the country's finances for months, if not years. This means that sanctions put in place over the past couple of days by the US, UK, EU, Japan and Canada are unlikely to have any significant effect on the Russian economy or its financial stability. Only the full package of measures used against Iran, shutting Russia out of the international payment systems SWIFT, while also banning purchase of Russian oil and gas would do the trick. As Hozok Lee Makiyama, the head of the European Centre for International Political Economy, said Europe has allowed itself to become more integrated with Russia, while Russia has separated itself from Europe. He said EU countries owned a combined 300 billion euro of Russian assets that would be vulnerable to confiscation if a full-blooded financial war broke out. The UK owns billions more via firms such as BP, which has nearly a 20% stake in Russian oil company Rosneft. Sanctions are one of the few options that the European countries have in a conflict situation like this. If you disconnect North Korea or Iran from the international financial system, you do not expose yourself to much damage. Speaking on BBC News, he added, while I don't say it is impossible to envisage Russia being barred from the Swiss system, it is the nuclear option which that means you exterminate yourself along with your enemy. SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Communications, is the main secure messaging system that banks use to make rapid and secure cross-border payments, allowing international trade to flow smoothly. It transmits trillions of dollars worth of deals every day, but is coming under pressure from the Chinese government's backed rival CIPS, which Russia could use to conduct its financial business through deals supplemented by direct transitions with counterparts. So, Russia can, of course, resort to another system, the Chinese system. So this isn't obviously the way to deal with it. Antochi Martha, great to see you on the stream. Thanks so much for that super chat. The anonymous hackers have said the Russian government's websites are currently down. And I wonder if they'll be able to hack nuclear weapons too. Look, I hope we're not going down that road. Blackouts, maybe disruption to public transport, that could be enough to put pressure on Putin, because if the general public see, why are we suffering? We're supposed to be winning here. That could turn, enough of that could be enough to turn the people against Putin. But it would require, I think, a substantial impact and a continuous impact. Thanks so much, Martha. It's also possible for the G7 countries and EU to ban the purchase of Russian gas and oil, but commodities analysts agree that while there is spare capacity in oil markets to make up for the loss of Russian supplies, with the price rise limited to $140 a barrel, there is no hope of boosting gas output to fill the gap created by a Russian ban. And this is something we should have been doing over the last decades. We should be moving away from fossil fuels, which of course frees us from Russian gas and Saudi Arabian oil. You know, Saudi Arabia, of course, being and the Middle East, these areas that are volatile. We've seen it over the last 2 decades how volatile the Middle East is. Now we're trying to move away from that. No, yeah, let's get into bed with Russia. Let's buy Russian gas. We need to be moving away from that. We have, if we want to, but then of course there's the political problem. Right-wing governments are completely against the idea of investing in renewable energy sources. We could, if we wanted, move, maybe not 100%, but close to that. If we wanted, we could invest massively in renewable energy, but we don't, because we have, unfortunately, we have governments, every 4 or 5 years we change government. So you'd have a left-wing government maybe who wants to invest in renewable energy. They're replaced by a right-wing government who doesn't want to. And any of the investment that was planned is removed, it's lost, and then we have to start the thing again the next time a left-wing government is back in power. And even left-wing governments are not going to go the full slog in investing in renewable energy. That's what we should have been doing over the last number of decades, and we haven't. And now that's why we're relying so much on countries like Russia and oil producers in the Middle East. We have the technology, we just don't have the political will. We have the resources if we want to, we just don't have the political will. You know, people say, oh, it's expensive. Look, Boris Johnson's government handed over, without a question, £37 billion to Dido Harding. Without a question. And she's gotten away with it. Mateus Zuka, thanks so much for that super chat. This money should be frozen now and kept to cover future war reparations for the Ukraine. Very good idea. A lot of these people, where do they get their money from? This money should be frozen, as you said, and it should be handed over eventually to rebuild Ukraine. In a similar way that the Americans said that they would use Iraqi oil to refund Iraq, to rebuild Iraq after the war, and then they didn't. So I want to show you a picture. This is video of British tanks arriving in Estonia. Now, of course, Estonia, this is NATO reinforcing itself. So obviously, Ukraine is not part of NATO. I'll just show you the clip. Ukraine is not part of NATO. That means that we're not able to help militarily, but that doesn't mean that NATO is not reinforcing itself in other parts of Europe. And you can see here, Estonia right on the border with Russia, and they are getting more and more equipment. These are in this example here, we have British tanks moving to Estonia. Not a significant number, but it's more the idea of unity. You attack one of NATO, you attack all of NATO, and that's why we're seeing more and more. Is this guy twirling his mustache? I didn't actually see this before. Let me just go back. This is not World War One, mate. You don't twirl your mustache like in World War One. Really, that was weird. Anyway, it might feel like World War One in some ways, but no, we're not in World War One. Let me read some more of your comments. Agreed the sanctions will knock Russia and the EU hard. Yeah, and that's the thing, is real sanctions harm also the person imposing the sanctions. Besides the sanctions, there's hence a mark of no touching, and in every business with Russia and goods purchased there is one of the actual consequences. Freddie B, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max. I've already heard people talking about filling tanks with fuel like petrol due to the likely increase in price. This is in Ireland. Oh no, I think we're going to see, yeah, you're probably right here. We're going to see a return to people. You said a bit of humor with the mustache. We're going to see people returning to the way things were before, during the pandemic. You know, the shortages of toilet paper, the shortages of petrol during the Brexit shortages. Yeah, prices have already risen. I don't know about you guys, but I just noticed I had to put diesel in my car the other day, and the price has gone up to €1.70 a litre. It seems like just about a week ago when it was 160 something. It seems to be going up like 10 cents a week or more, and that's concerning. And that's of course going to go up as well. I'm trying to keeping this car. It's an old car, so I'm trying to keep it as long as I can. But I'm going to replace it with an electric car eventually, because it's not feasible. How about building a dam at Iron Bridge? It will stop the flooding and supply power. That's what my friend's boyfriend has done. Went to the petrol station to fill up his tank in case the price increase. The price is going to increase. The company that's moving the UK tanks around is a private company that's been given the PFI contracts. They're linked to government donations. QA library. so even this image here is like a PPE contract. So you donate to the Conservative Party and they will give you a contract to move tanks to Estonia, which is probably, quite lucrative. You're going close to a war zone. Not into a war zone, but there's probably getting extra money for that. So that's great, yes. So the company who's moving tanks around for the British government, the Department of Defence, is a donor to the Conservative Party, and they're winning the contracts. This is like PPE once again. Thanks for that, QA. Tories have been blessed with Brexit excuses. First COVID, second war, no Brexit here. Yeah, and what's going to come after this? Diesel here in Scotland is £1.70 a litre, and Yanks are moaning about $1 a litre. Yeah, the Yanks are always complaining. I saw one the other day complaining about how it's $4 a gallon. How am I supposed to fill my my 6 litre V8 or V12 truck that I use to pick up my kids from school? I replied and I said, buy an EV or even a hybrid, even buy a small car. These people, obviously, it's just an extension of what. Americans are spoilt on petrol prices. They complain about $4 per gallon, while Europe pays $8 per gallon. Yes. I remember a story somebody told me. An American came to Europe. I don't know if it was to Ireland or to Italy, but they were telling me that they went to the petrol station and they were putting in... they thought that the petrol station pump was broken because it was like, yeah, but I've only put in a small amount of petrol and it's really expensive. Yes, welcome to Europe. My stock in defense company is going to pay. Maybe it's a good idea to invest in people who make javelin. I don't know what company make javelins. That tank is solar powered. No, although there are electric tanks, would you believe? I think we're getting a little bit off topic, but so guys, we're almost at the end of the stream tonight. As somebody was talking about tanks, I just wanted to show you this this clip. from some time ago. Boris Johnson's foresight when it comes to weapons dealing with Russia.
Mr. Elwood, that you think we should go back and prepare for tank battles in.
No, you're putting words into my mouth.
I don't know what. But you're saying that. You mentioned.
But you mentioned tanks. On the European we border. Are cutting back on our tanks. What is amassing on the Russian border right now, on the Ukrainian border? It's tanks, arguably enough. Well, but that's besides the point. I'm saying step back, look at the wider security picture, look at our defence posture, and see what needs to be done.
If you think that UK tanks are the answer, then
no. Now you're going.
So Boris Johnson is saying, no, we don't need tanks. Why would we need tanks to deal with Russia? And oh no, I got rid of the video. But you saw the video before of UK tanks being moved to Estonia. Ian, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Thank you so much. Raytheon, made in Scotland. Nobody mentions the damage to our environment from all. This is something really I try not to talk about it because it really makes me very sad about the damage to ecology, animals, plants, forest, nature that's been destroyed by this war. And but you're right, all shorts. The damage to the environment by all of these armored vehicles driving around, these weapons, not literally weapons of mass destruction, but weapons of mass destruction in a sense, destroying the land, destroying the cities as well, but also the landscape and nature, and tanks driving through forests with no respect for anything. It is. I don't actually talk about it because it depresses me. Sorry about that. I don't know what else to say, but it is something that needs to be highlighted because it's true. Remember the last crisis? They were filling Aldi bags with petrol. Yes, I remember seeing videos of people filling plastic bags with petrol at petrol stations. It's like that's a disaster waiting to happen.
You're saying that we should commit UK tanks to the defence of Ukraine.
No. You deliberately. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry you're taking us down this rabbit hole because you know perfectly well it's not about tanks.
I'm not taking you down a rabbit hole.
Tanks are one element of a wide spectrum of our defence capability.
You brought up tanks, Mr. Elwood.
Tanks.
You brought up
aircraft.
Tanks.
48 aircraft, F-35s. You promised 138. You've cut back to 48. You cut back on not just tanks. Warriors have been removed completely. Hercules aircraft removed completely. And then 10,000 troopers have been removed. So we can talk about...
Because he needs to spend it on other things like PPE contracts and Dido Harding.
Tanks, or we can talk about the wider spectrum of capabilities that have been reduced. At the very time I'm trying to make clear that there are bigger threats coming over the horizon.
Yes, Prime Minister. And I think what I'm trying to make clear is I think that it's now or never for the UK armed forces. We have to recognise that the old concepts of fighting big tank battles on the European land.
To a certain extent, Johnson is right. What's happening in Ukraine is not drone warfare. It's battles on the ground. We're seeing individuals fighting Russian tanks. We're seeing Ukrainian armored vehicles being destroyed by Russian tanks. Like, if there is a ground invasion, and we tend to look at the technology point and say, oh well, the technology will save us. The technology will be able to wipe out entire armies. To a certain extent, yes, but what we don't know, we aren't at that stage yet. Most of the battles are quite conventional, and the military are saying we need more money, we need more resources, and the politicians are saying yes, but that's not good for. We're supposed to look like we're spending money on the people, even though we're not. But if we spend lots of money on the military, it's bad. It's bad optics. I think what's happening in Ukraine at the moment may change that. £2 billion a week on test kits. I was going to say I'm going to see about doing driving lessons, but I think I'll patch that for now. Tobias Elwood is the man, the next prime minister. F-35, one in the Mediterranean. I think you lost one. Why is the Russian ambassador for Britain in the video? You know, the blonde one. You got me there for a moment. Excuse me. Yes. Yes. You know, his name is even Boris. Good Russian name like Boris. Oh my god. Okay, we're almost at the end. I just wanted to cover one more. Yes. So we have the Brexiteers in Europe. We have, in Britain and in the United Kingdom, Brexiteers taking Russian money. We have the likes of Le Pen in France. We have Salvini in Italy. Others in Hungary, in the Netherlands. We have all of these individuals, either close to Putin, taking Putin's money, and then we have Republicans in America. Here is Mike Pompeo, former, I forget what his job with, Secretary of State, former Secretary of State for Donald Trump. He was asked about, it says here, NBC asked him, Russian state media has played down your own words, calling Putin shrewd, capable, and you said have enormous respect. Do you regret those words? And let's hear what Mike Pompeo had to say.
Russian state media has played your own words from this week, in which you called Russian President Vladimir Putin shrewd, capable. You said you have enormous respect.
Is he on a bloody scooter? Is he riding around this place on a scooter? At the moment I thought he was disabled, but he's on one of these bloody scooters.
Russian state media has played your own words from this week, in which you called Russian President Vladimir Putin shrewd, capable. You said you have enormous respect. Do you regret your words?
I've been fighting communism since I was a teenager. I'm going to keep fighting communism.
I've been fighting communism since I was a teenager. Does he honestly believe that Vladimir Putin is communism?
Regret your words about Putin this week, though.
I have worked my entire life to make sure that the United States was free of communist dictatorships. I understand my enemy. I'll always call my enemy for what he is.
What, you call your enemy shrewd and capable, and someone you have enormous respect for?
We need to make sure that we continue to crush the Russians and not destroy people's
Why speak words that come off as soft praise for Vladimir Putin? Hey, hands up. Can we ask? Sir. Do you wish that those, Secretary? Do you wish that those in the Republic?
Why is he on a scooter? Okay, maybe he's disabled. I don't know, but Pompeo doesn't see Putin as the enemy, more of an ally. Yes, he's disabled mentally. Pompeo is a tool. I thought you were talking about the bald guy. No, at the beginning it looks like I thought he was talking. I thought it was like this. I don't know if you can see him in the screen. I thought it was the bald guy because he looks like he's talking to the bald guy, but he's actually speaking to Mike Pompeo, who seems to have lost some weight actually. Testing the scooter for Sleepy Joe. Then explain to me why Republicans are now cheering on Putin. Exactly. And this is not the worst. I've seen worse videos than this of members of the Republican Party saying, "Yeah, how Putin is a wonderful Christian, and he's fighting wokeness." I think that was what's the guy? A friend of Farage as well. I forget his name. Horrible individual. The American establishment fears socialism so much they prefer Putin. The scooter thing is a new military tactic, assault device soon to hit the global markets. The Saudis want to buy. Oh my god. Any excuse for the Tories dumps wearing face masks in the comments. Yes. So guys, we're at the end of the stream for tonight. Let's keep an eye on what's happening with Ukraine. Let's hope that, like, solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Let's hope that this is over soon, that Putin eventually is forced out, that he does not make the gains that he hopes. I truly believe what he's trying. Steve Bannon, yes. I truly believe what he's trying to do here is to replace the government in Ukraine with the puppet regime, and then close the borders and create a buffer between himself and NATO, and then attempt to increase the sphere of influence, maybe in Moldova or other countries. I think that's the next step. Let's hope that he does not succeed. So I just want to finish with this one video tonight, guys. Just to finish on a light note. Thanks so much for everyone for coming on tonight. Thank you for all of your super chats, greatly appreciated. Solidarity once again with Ukraine, and let's hope that everyone gets through the night, and you know that the Ukrainians come out the victor here.
When Britain imposes sanctions on Russia, they won't know what hit them, because they won't notice. We've been very clear. Vladimir Putin better not mess with Ukraine, or will make his life very difficult indeed. He's already invaded Ukraine. Yes, and that's why I have pledged never again to drink vodka. What? I had tickets booked to a Chekhov play, won't be going to that. And I was halfway through War and Peace. That's going in the bin, but which is quite a relief actually, it's very long, and somehow inappropriate now. Are you going after anything that Putin cares about? We've sanctioned several banks, ones he doesn't use, and a number of individuals too. 3. Well, 3 is the magic number. There are suggestions that you're avoiding sanctioning several Russian friends of Putin because they also donate to your party. How do you respond to that? I think it's important to point out that just because someone's from Russia doesn't mean they're an ally of Putin. You can't assume what someone's like based on where they're from. That's xenophobic and racist. And that's wrong? In this case, yes, they're not refugees. Oh, we're just getting news that Russia has said they're planning to invade Sokovia next. What's your response? That is totally unacceptable. Russia will never take Sokovia. I've just been informed that that was Russian misinformation, and Sokovia is actually a fictional country from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I knew that, which is why I said they would never take it. Now, you said that Ofcom should look into banning Russia Today. Won't that also lead to the Russians banning the BBC? Well, the licence fee's being cut, so they need to slim down anyway. And maybe if they stopped being so woke, Russia wouldn't want to kick them out. You're on Russia's side on this. On the culture war, yes. Not on the other war. I know it's confusing. Do you really think that the UK can have an effect on the world stage these days? Look, the Scots Guards kicked the backside of Tsar Nicholas I in 1853 in Crimea, and we can always do it again. So you're threatening military action? In absolutely no way. Thank you, Minister. Next up, as Jacob Rees-Mogg orders a study into whether the UK should bring back imperial weights and measures, we ask if it's also time to bring back child labour, cockfighting, and ministers who take even an ounce of their job seriously.
Well done to Matt. Wonderful video. So guys, I'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Anyone who's from Ukraine, please stay extra safe. Solidarity once again, and let's hope everything does get resolved in a peaceful way. Have a great weekend, guys. Stay safe once again, and I'll see you at the next live stream on Tuesday. Good night. Take care.